Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, I hope each and every single one of you is doing fantastic and your Ramadan is going epic and you're fasting and you're furious right about now for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to welcome you to Iftar with Imran. This is the new show, inshallah ta'ala. As you can see, my name is Imran and we have the Iftar here and it's almost Iftar time, so you're going to be eating very soon. Hopefully you're going to be watching this during Iftar, so we're kind of doing Iftar together. Inshallah ta'ala, today I'm going to be discussing a topic that's relevant to a lot of sisters, okay? And every day we're going to pick a different topic, inshallah ta'ala. But this is pertaining to sisters who come into their menstrual cycle in the month of Ramadan. You see, sisters come into their menses, their period, on a monthly basis. So the overwhelming majority are going to have to take some time off from praying and from fasting. Now, generally speaking, we all know the massive reward connected to doing deeds in the month of Ramadan, let alone fasting and praying, because they're from the greatest acts of worship. So sisters might wonder, hold up, am I going to miss out on these rewards? Am I just going to miss out on these rewards? Are the guys just going to take all the rewards while the sisters have to sit back and just kind of be patient? What can we do? Is there a compensation? Is there a substitute? They don't want to miss out on the reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has facilitated. So inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to answer this question that probably comes to a lot of sisters' minds. And it's going to shock you. It's going to shock you, my sisters, the answer. Because you're going to see, not only are you not missing out on reward, not only are you able to gain the exact same reward as the men, but you are actually able to gain even more reward than the men as a result of you being smart when it comes to your menstrual cycle during the month of Ramadan. How, you might ask? Let's begin, inshallah ta'ala. I want to mention to you a 3-stage process. 3 things, if you do these 3 things, you can walk away with more reward than the men in the month of Ramadan. And these 3 things are directly linked to your period. The time when you can't pray and you can't fast. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in other words, has legislated that you're not allowed to pray and fast, but you thinking that that's actually taking reward away is actually a means of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to facilitate for you to gain even more reward by doing less. Allahu Akbar. Let's begin. The first reason, and the first thing that you need to do in order to make sure you walk away with more reward than the men, is that you need to have an intention to pray and to fast at the time when you are not praying and fasting due to your period. Why am I saying have an intention? Because you see, my sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. He said, actions are in accordance to their intentions. Which means you'll be rewarded in accordance to the intention that you had. Okay? If I want to do an act of worship, and I intend to do that act of worship. For example, I want to pay lots of charity in Ramadan, okay? But for some reason, I'm not able to pay that charity in the month of Ramadan because I lose my job and I lose all my savings, right? Because I intended to do it, even though I did not do it, because of my intention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will inshallah ta'ala reward me, okay? Now the opposite is also true. I might actually give lots of money in Ramadan, but I don't intend to do it for Allah's sake. In fact, there's no sincerity in my action. I intend to show off to the people. Hey guys, look at the money I give. You know, sometimes you give money and you kind of show off when you do it, right? Well, guess what? I did the action, but because my intention wasn't purely for Allah's sake, I will not get rewarded. To show you how powerful the intention is. This is what Imam Yahya ibn Abi Kathir rahimahullah said. Learn about the intentions before you learn about the actions. Because you see, the intention can get you the reward even though you don't do the act. So, my sisters, when you come onto your menses, did you intend that you would be fasting and you would be praying and you would be doing taraweeh and you would be doing the night prayer? Did you intend that you'd be doing that if you weren't on your menstrual cycle? Yeah, inshallah ta'ala you did, right? And if you didn't, intend it. Make sure you have an intention that Allah, I would have been doing this had it not come upon me like this, yeah? Then you will be rewarded even though you didn't fast. Pay attention, sisters. You will get the exact same reward of every man who fasted and the exact same reward of every man who prayed, even though you didn't pray, because your intention was always there. What is the evidence for this? The evidence is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and it's narrated in many places, but this is the wording of Sahih Bukhari. When the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا مَرِضَ الْعَبْدُ أَوْ سَافَرَ كُتِبَ لَهُ مِثْلُ مَا كَانَ يَعْمَلُ مُقِيمًا صَحِيحًا. The Prophet ﷺ said that if a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes sick, or he's traveling, or she's traveling, okay? Now, pay attention, pause for a second. Why is the Prophet ﷺ talking about the sick and talking about the traveler? Because as we know, the one who's sick, right, does not have to fast, okay? And as we know, the one who's traveling also doesn't have to fast, okay? So the Prophet ﷺ is saying anyone who's sick and anyone who's traveling, okay, for them, they are no longer able to do the acts of worship that they would do when they were healthy and when they were at home, right? Because now they're sick or traveling. So the Prophet ﷺ said, كُتِبَ لَهُ مِثْلُ مَا كَانَ يَعْمَلُ مُقِيمًا صَحِيحًا. Even though that this person, by virtue of them being sick and a traveler now, are not able to do those acts of worship that they would have been doing, the act of worship will still be written for this person as if he or she was healthy and at home actually doing that act of worship. So sisters, the same applies for you. You're not a traveler and you're not a sick person, but you're on your menstrual cycle. So the same reason for why a traveler and a person who's sick is not able to fulfill the act of worship that he or she would have done is the same reason that applies to you. You also are not able to fast and pray because of nothing that is in your own control. This is not your control, right? So the same way the one who became sick, it wasn't in his or her control to become sick. They were praying and fast. Even the sick person has to pray. The sick person has no exception of leaving the prayer. But the fasting is something that's uplifted from them. So the sick person like, I used to fast, but now I can't fast because I became sick. That's not in your control. The same way the menstrual cycle is not in your control. Now whose understanding is this? Because you can't give your own understanding, you got to give the understanding of the ulama. Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah in his great book Fath al-Bari, in which he explains Sahih al-Bukhari, and he comments on this hadith. What did he say? He said this hadith, when the Prophet talked about the traveler and the sick person, he said this is for anyone who does acts of obedience, acts of worship, and then they become prevented from those acts of worship. Do you fall into that, my sister? The one who's on her menstrual cycle? You were doing acts of obedience and acts of worship, but you became prevented from it. The menstrual cycle prevented you, it wasn't your fault. And then he continues. He said, and they intended to do it. And if it wasn't for the preventative measure, they would have done it. And then he said the hadith in Sunan Abi Dawood clarifies this even further. So what Imam Ibn Hajar is saying, rahimahullah, my sisters, what he's saying is that, sisters, you used to pray and fast. The menstrual cycle came and it prevented you from these acts of obedience and worship. And had it not come, you would have intended to do it anyway, and you still intended to do it, then inshallah ta'ala, you will fall under the same as the traveler, and you will fall same as a sick person, in a sense where it will be written for you as if you were doing it. There will be written. Sisters, pause for a second. Just realize what took place. You will get a reward and not even have to do those acts of worship. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Is that for the men? Is that for the men? The men don't get that. I want to go on a bit of a side point and a bit of a tangent here for a split second. This is proof that Islam is not about equality. Yeah, I said it. Islam is not about equality. Don't be fooled by what this feminism stuff pushes you and this secular stuff about equality between men and women. That's a lie and a myth and a fallacy. Men and women are not equal in any way, shape or form. Of course, there are some shapes and forms maybe, but generally speaking, they're not equal. There are clear-cut psychological differences, biological differences. There's so many differences, okay? And based on the differences, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislates and treats them differently. Do you know why Allah treats them differently? Because if Allah was to treat two genders that are different in the exact same way, it would result in injustice. It would result in injustice. For example, generally speaking, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave more strength to the men than He gave to the women, right? Because Allah gave more, even though there are some sisters that will knock a brother out. They're out there, I know. But generally speaking, men, their body type has generally been designed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be able to actually exert more strength. Okay? Now, based on this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He created a man in a particular way, He legislated and made laws in accordance to this man's creation. Because Allah said, أَلَا لَهُ الْخَلْقُ وَالْأَمْرُ. To Allah is the creation and the command, the legislation. Allah commanded each particular creation in accordance to the way He created it. So because Allah gave the man strength, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the man to do jihad. And the jihad can become obligatory upon the man. Whereas the jihad is not obligatory upon the woman. Now, it would be unfair for the women to be told it's obligatory upon you to be on the front line. It would be what? It would be unfair. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't given to the woman what He gave to the man in this regard. Because Allah gave strength to the man, it's only fair, it's only just that the man is the one who takes this responsibility and he uses that strength to protect the women and the children. Do you see? So, it would be unjust and unfair if Allah treated them exactly the same. Now, as a side point, I just want to mention, I'm not talking about the ISIS jihad here. I'm talking about the textual jihad, the jihad that's discussed in the classical books and understood in terms of the correct conditions that are applied as per the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ and the understanding of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in. So please don't take me out of context and be like, oh, this guy's talking about jihad, talking about ISIS. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the correct legislative shara'i jihad that inshallah ta'ala perhaps one day we'll go into discussing it because it's a relevant topic, a topic that a lot of people misunderstand, that a lot of people don't really come to terms with, and because of it, they might become inclined towards things like ISIS, so on and so forth. But inshallah ta'ala we'll discuss it another time and another place. But for the record, please don't take things out of context, inshallah ta'ala. So, the point I'm making is men and women are not equal. They're not equal. They're different. That difference doesn't mean that, all it means is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will basically go towards justice for each one. Now, the same is with your menses. Because the sisters are on their menstrual cycle, that's different to the men. So it's only just and it's only fair that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you time off. Because only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you guys know the difficulty and the stress and the discomfort that sisters go through as a result of their menstrual cycle. Okay, I want to say I empathize with you, but I can't even begin to say that because it's something that's so unique to you guys. Only you guys really know that which you go through, right? And because of that difficulty that you undergo, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you time off. He gave you time off, and then even when He gave you the time off, what did He do? He didn't take away your reward because you still used to do it, inshallah ta'ala. He didn't take away your reward because you still used to do it, because you intended to do it, that you would have done it, you regularly did it. So now that it's gone, you're still going to get the reward. Is that equality? No, but it's justice. And Islam is about justice. Now, would it be fair for the men to be like, hold up, I want time off as well. I want to not pray and fast as well. And I still want the reward. But then the men don't go through what the women go through. So why would they deserve that in this regard? They wouldn't. You see where I'm coming from. So, Islam is not about justice, it's about equality. And this is many other examples. I don't want to go too much of an off topic, inshallah ta'ala, but there's many other examples. For example, if parents raise righteous daughters, okay, then that's a ticket to Jannah, as the Prophet ﷺ said. But do you get a ticket to Jannah just for raising righteous sons? No. Is that equal? No, but it's just. It's justice. It's justice. And there's wisdom why that's justice, but we'll discuss that another day. So there's many examples. I think Islam's not about equality, it's about justice. So the original topic that we're discussing is how the sisters can still make the most. Now we've already understood that by this first step, which is by having the intention to fast and pray, even though you're not able to fast and pray, will lead you to the exact same reward that you would have got. In other words, right now you're equal to the men. Your reward is equal to the men, okay? But we said we want your reward to be higher than the men, inshallah ta'ala, right? So how can that be so? That's stage 2 now. The first stage is just a good intention, purely for the sake of Allah. Stage 2. Stage 2 is, my sisters, you can do acts of worship other than the salah and acts of worship other than the fasting. There are still other acts of worship that are present and able for you to do. For example, you can do dua. You get rewarded for dua. Okay, you can make lots of dua. You can do istighfar, a lot of astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. My sisters, you can read Quran. Inshallah ta'ala, maybe we'll discuss this in another topic in another day, and inshallah ta'ala we'll go into it in more detail at some point on the Muslim Survival Guide, which is our online Islamic studies program. But, sisters, the strongest opinion is, and the strongest opinion is, inshallah ta'ala, as per the ulama, who are in accordance to the evidence and have the evidence on their side, is that the women, even on their menstrual cycle, and they're not in a state of tahara, they can still read the Quran. They can read the Quran, inshallah ta'ala, no problem. You can actually recite the Quran, no problem, as if even before, when you were not on your menstrual cycle. You can go to it, you can read it, inshallah ta'ala. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. No problem. Sisters, the time you'll be spending praying, read extra Quran now. Read extra Quran. Sisters, give sadaqah, charity. Do that as much as you can. My sisters, seek knowledge. Seek knowledge. You see, the time that you would have spent, praying, or the time that you would have maybe spent a bit kind of tired out because maybe you were fasting, so you were a bit slower, so you were taking a little break here and there. Now you've got more energy because you're not fasting, and you've also you've got more time because you're not praying. So spend that time seeking knowledge. Do you understand? Seeking knowledge, the great act of worship it is. Allah said, هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Allah said, the one who has knowledge is not same. Is he the same as the one who has knowledge? Is she the same as the one who has knowledge? No, they're different. Why? Because the one who has knowledge is much more greater than the one who doesn't have knowledge. Okay? I'm going to go off on a tangent just talking about the virtues of knowledge, which I don't want to do. But the point is, spend this time seeking knowledge. And inshallah ta'ala, one thing that you can do, bi'idhnillah al-kareem, is you can actually study on a Muslim survival guide this Ramadan and make use of our fasting program that we have called Fasting and Furious. We actually this Ramadan are basically releasing 3 courses. One which we've already released, which is Fasting and Furious, which is all about the amazing thing to Ramadan, the virtues of Quran and the night prayer and the do's and the don'ts, and there's a lot of stuff there. Then there was also, inshallah ta'ala, on the middle of Ramadan, we're releasing a course on the tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha, so you can have a strong relationship with that surah. And on the last 10 nights, we're going to release a course on the tafsir of the last 15 surahs from the end of the Quran, from Surah Al-Nas to Surah Al-Zalzala. Why? Because these are the most common surahs that everyone knows, and we want you to have a relationship with them, particularly in the last 10 nights. And all of this right now, inshallah ta'ala, is available absolutely free. Because there's a small little tuition fee that's on the Muslim Survival Guide that goes towards basically, the cost of it goes towards running our da'wah and all the expenses. But because of Ramadan, we wanted to make it free for everyone. So if you go right now to fastingandfurious.com at the link below, just leave your email address, inshallah ta'ala. We'll send you an email of how you can access that for free, inshallah ta'ala. So this Ramadan, you're going to get these 3 courses. The first one is already live, and all the other previous courses, the course on marriage, the course on ruqyah, and all the other courses that we have on there, inshallah ta'ala, you can access all that. So you could spend that time when you're on your menstrual cycle, sister, you could spend it seeking knowledge, okay? So that's another act of worship you can do. And also you can do adhkar, you can do the daily remembrances. We all know that book, The Fortress of a Muslim, Hisn al-Muslim. Just read that. When you wake up, there's a dua that you read, or a dhikr, or a supplication that you make. When you go sleep, there is. Before you go into your house, after you go in your house, before you go in the toilet, after you go in the toilet, when you eat your food, after you eat your food, after Fajr prayer, after Asr prayer. What are these remembrances? You can, inshallah ta'ala, read them, no problem. Your whole day, basically, for everything in your day that you do, there is a dhikr. There is a remembrance, there is a dua or a supplication that you can make for every single thing that you do in the day. Whether it's worship or not, there's something you can do. And that would make your entire day worship, even though you're not praying and you're not fasting. And that's generally a habit we should get outside even after Ramadan. Now, okay, question comes to mind, okay? How does doing these acts of worship help you to get more reward than the men? How does that happen? Do you know how, my sisters? Pay very close attention. We already mentioned that you're getting the exact same reward as the men by not fasting and praying, even though you had the intention, right? So you're already getting that reward, just like the men. But now you've got some spare time, right? You've got some free time to do extra things because you're not doing the praying and the fasting. You're not doing the tarawih at night, but you intended to pray the qiyamul layl and the tahajjud, so you're going to get rewarded for it even though you're not doing it. So now you've got that spare time, you can actually add in these extra acts of worship, of reading Quran, doing dhikr, dua, giving charity, and you will get the reward of doing all of the fasting and praying even though you're not doing it. Because you now got extra time, you can add extra things on there and get extra reward that you might not have been able to get because you didn't have time to do these other acts of worship. So now you can actually get more than the men. I don't think some of you got that. Let me say it one more time. You're already getting the same as the men because of your intention, okay? But now you've got extra time still, right? You're already getting the same as the men without actually having to do what the men are doing. That's the point. You're getting the same as the men without doing what the men are doing. Now that means because you're not doing it, you've got extra time. So now use that time to fill in with extra acts of worship. For example, reading Quran, doing dhikr, istighfar, dua, sadaqah, seeking knowledge, inshallah ta'ala. Do these extra acts of worship. Are the men going to be able to do them? No, because they're too busy doing the what? The prayer, and they're too busy doing the fasting, which is important, right? But now you don't have to fast and pray. You're getting the reward of all of those fasting and praying. Even the tarawih, you're getting the reward for it if you intended it, right? So now you're not doing it. You've got time. Add in extra. You get the reward of all of that plus more now. Did that make sense? If it didn't make sense, rewind it till it makes sense. Because inshallah ta'ala, that is epic. So that's the second way. Now there's a third stage where you can actually get even more reward now. You can actually get even more reward, and your reward can just fly out of the sky right now. And that is to do a'mal that are muta'addiya. What do I mean here? When you do acts of worship, there are two types. There's a'mal that are qasira, which is actions of worship that are specific just to you. They don't actually transcend and transmit from you to anyone else. They don't benefit anyone else, they just benefit you. That's, for example, like reading Quran, that benefits you. Okay? Doing hajj and praying and fasting benefits you, no one else, necessarily speaking. But then there's a'mal that are muta'addiya. They benefit you and they benefit someone else. And that's like da'wah. That's like enjoining good. And that's like prohibiting evil. That benefits you, you get the reward. But also you, by virtue of doing this da'wah, are benefiting people in your community. So my sisters, now you're on your menstrual cycle and you're not able to fast and you're not able to pray. You encourage your family members to pray. You encourage them to fast. Sisters, you're married, wake up your husbands. Make them pray the tahajjud. Send your kids and if you sisters, you've either got fathers or you got husbands or you got sons and daughters, or you're in the family circle. Okay? So you can't pray, but there's going to be, people in your family that can pray. So wake them up and encourage them to go. You know what's good about that? Is that you're going to get the reward of them praying. He's going to get rewarded for praying if you make him pray, and you're going to get the same reward without any of the reward being decreased from him. So imagine you tell him to pray. You say, husband, my son, or my brother, or my father, listen, pray the 2 raka'ah of sunnah before the fajr prayer. But the Prophet ﷺ said that it's better than this entire world and everything that's in it. When you encourage him to pay that, now you've got more time. Remember, you can't do it, but you can make others do it. You can't do it, but you can make others do it. So you're going to get the reward for that as well. Make them pray the sunnah al-rawatib, which is the extra sunnahs that you pray with the fard. We pray the 2 sunnah with the fajr, and you pray the 4 before the dhuhr, and 2 after dhuhr, and the 2 after maghrib, and the 2 after isha. Make your husband pray them. Make your son, make your brother, make your father pray them. Because the reward of that, what is it, the reward of that? The Prophet ﷺ said that you get a house in Jannah, right? If you do your sunnah al-rawatib, your sunnah that are rawatib. So you can't do it, but make them do it. You get the reward of even them doing it now. Do you see? Not only that, inshallah ta'ala, tell them to read the Quran. Make them pray Taraweeh, make them pray the night prayer, inshallah ta'ala. And whenever you see family members, give them da'wah, give them reminders, remind them, listen, fear Allah, spend time talking about the Prophet ﷺ's biography. Remember, okay, when you're doing this, you're actually getting the reward of them doing these things as well. How amazing is that? How amazing is that? So that's the 3-stage process, how you can walk away with more reward than the men. Stage number 1, have an intention. At least there you get exactly what the men get. Okay? Number 2, now because you've got extra time, because you're not doing these acts of worship and you're still being rewarded for them, add in extra acts of worship, inshallah ta'ala, like the Quran and seeking knowledge and so on and so forth. So you're now already above the men, inshallah ta'ala. And then, what do? Specifically go to family members who are not on their menstrual cycle and are able to fast, and of course pray, everyone prays. Then tell them and encourage them to pray. By you actually encouraging them for the sake of Allah, provided your intention is sincere, you actually get reward of them doing that act of worship as well. So now look at this. You're going to be rewarded for what you didn't do, which is the fasting and the praying. And then you're going to be rewarded for that which you did do. And then you're going to be rewarded for that which you told others to do. Allahu Akbar. You can walk away with way more reward than the men. And that is something unique to our sisters. Because sisters, wallahi billahi wa tallahi wa aqsum bi rabbil Ka'bah, you are special. And you don't get credit the way you deserve. We live in this day and age and it's hard. But you guys are patient. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His mercy and His love and His kindness and His generosity and His tenderness, He's provided this opportunity for you. So please do not miss out. Okay? Don't miss out. Make the most of this. Inshallah ta'ala, before I leave, I just want to encourage you guys one last time to go to the MuslimSurvivalGuide.com or go to fastingandfurious.com rather, and get access to our fasting and Ramadan program, which is, like I said, it's a gift for you. It's available for free for everyone, inshallah ta'ala, for this month of Ramadan. Just go to the link in my bio, type in the email address. There's only 8 full days left before this offer runs out. This offer of it being free is only left for the next 8 days. Like I said, you'll get access to this course and the next 2 courses in Ramadan, which are on the Tafsir of Fatiha and the last 15 surahs of the Quran, that is going to come out, inshallah ta'ala, in this month of Ramadan, and all of what? The other courses that are already on there. And if you decide to carry on, inshallah ta'ala, after Ramadan, then every month we try to release a new course. Brothers and sisters, please, inshallah ta'ala, don't miss out on this opportunity. Go to the link below, inshallah ta'ala, and register ASAP, inshallah ta'ala. Hopefully I'll see you on Iftar with Imran tomorrow. If not even better, I'll see you on the Muslim Survival Guide tonight. Fastinginfurious.com. Click on the link, just leave your email address and we'll directly email you how you can get instant access for free. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.